jibber jab, bamboozle, nooka noozle, bippity bop, she called. You jibber jab, bamboozle, nooka noozle, bippity bop, she called. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know it.
I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Independent Thinking. So Governor Ritter is about halfway through his first term, some would have it his only term. How has he done so far? To talk about it, the state majority leader. I still, after, what, now 4 years, have a hard time getting majority leader out when I introduce Ken Gordon. Good to see you again, sir.
Nice to see you, John.
And from the Rocky Mountain News, we're running the Rocky Talk session, Mark Wolf. Appreciate it. How is the blogosphere treating you?
The blogosphere is treating me very well. It's something that I never probably would have envisioned myself doing, but only a couple of years ago this job didn't exist, and newspapers are changing, and it's fun being on this side of the equation. This
side of the newspaper equation being employed.
Employed.
That is
exactly.
a tough job to have these days in the newspaper world. Congratulations. Well, now we're going to talk about how the governor has done. So I've got to put the cards on the table. If Mike Coffman wins for 6th Congressional District, there will be a vacancy which will be filled by Bill Ritter to be Secretary of State. You lost that position by a really tight fight. What was the final count when you and Mike ran 2 years ago?
Yeah, I got over 49% of the vote.
And fortunately, you didn't get over 50% of the vote.
No, Mike got a little over 50%.
And people on both sides of the aisle really complimented that race as a clean race, no below the belt hitting. And you guys really had some differences, and you aired it out. And both of you seemed to get along very well during a very tight race.
Well, I think that's true. I don't believe in negative campaigning, and Mike doesn't either. And we talked about issues and didn't take personal shots at each other. Now,
if Mike gets this job to replace Tom Tancredo, would you take the job if Ritter called on you to become a Secretary of State? I would imagine you've got to be on the very, very short list for this.
I probably would if he asked me to do it.
All right. So in other words, while we're here reviewing how Ritter has done in the last year and a half, the guy who might be giving you your job for the next couple of years, so just out of curiosity, I'm just curious here. So how do you think the governor has done in the last couple of years? He might be listening.
Well, as we've all agreed before we started, I'm a straight shooter. And anyway, I think the governor's done a very good job. I think he's a good guy. He's authentic. When you talk to him, he tells you what he really thinks. He doesn't do political calculations before he answers every question. And I agree with his priorities, as you would imagine. Educating our kids in Colorado, having a robust health care safety net, and protecting the environment, and working on renewable energy in order to protect the environment. So, you know, I think the governor's done a good job and has gotten us going in the right direction.
Okay, so when he appoints, I don't know, Andrew Romanoff to Secretary of State instead of you, would you change that position at all?
No.
All right, we're gonna record this. We're gonna make sure it's there for future reference.
Okay, that's fine.
Fair enough. All
You
right,
know, I'd like to follow up a little bit on what you said about the Secretary of State's job, because I mean, I think I recall that we had an election crisis in this state, and then in about 15 minutes it all went away, and you were the author of the bill to do all paper elections, and then all of a sudden the governor and three other legislators backed away from it. How did...
You mean that guy who might hire you got it completely wrong with the electronic ballots?
Well, you see, we have to depend on county clerks to run elections, and the county clerks told us that they just couldn't move to a paper ballot election this quickly. And so, since we were relying on their expertise, and it's different for each county, they have different equipment, we went ahead and did what the clerks said they wanted to do. But I believe that the safest thing to do was to use paper ballots.
Still do?
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's bring it over here. Now, you're in touch with the people. The idea of a blogger at a newspaper said you're supposed to be there talking to the common folks. What do the common folks say about Bill Ritter?
Well, John, you know, I don't think this will come as a surprise to you, but people disagree with each other on the internet. It's not some big electronic campfire where people all sit around and sing Kumbaya.
In fact, they only disagree with each other on the internet because it's kind of like talk radio. You don't have to look somebody in the eyes when you disagree with them.
They do not march forward with a single vision for making America greater. And, you know, on the blogosphere, you get polarized opinions. In fact, I pulled a few from when I have posed the question to people about what they think of the governor's first term. halfway through. And an illegal property tax increase, steadfast opposition to any effort to increase the production of oil and gas in the state, an out-of-the-public view maneuver to allow unions to take over the state workers, an emphasis on expensive and unreliable alternative energy at the expense of coal and hydropower, an environmental agenda that makes California look favorable to business. Yes, that's the end. Or the end of Ritter's 4-year term cannot come soon enough. You go to the next post, Ritter's done a fine job actually working on fixing things in the state. As for the unions, it's about time someone in government stood up for the middle class in the state. Thanks, Bill.
All right, let's go through this. Let's start from the very beginning. Bill came out with this great idea, the Colorado Promise. One of the first things he put forward and said that he would sign and then had to veto under pressure of the business community was 1072. This was last year's session, and it said that we would change the way unions in the private sector are able to organize. Right now we have the Labor Peace Act. You need basically a supermajority in order to, in essence, close a union shop. He had a tuck tail and run after that one. That wasn't a success for him, was it?
Well, I think it probably was a success for him because it showed that he wasn't, unlike what some people on your side of the aisle are saying, he's not just doing what Labor wants, because Labor wanted 1072 to go into law, and Governor Ritter thought that it had gone through the process too fast, that people hadn't been able to meet and talk about it.
But you know that's not the case, because he gave instructions to the Democrats, if you bring it forward, I will sign it. You really think it was the process that bothered him, or do you think it was because the business community was about to decapitate him? His veto message was the process wasn't good. That's baloney.
Well, if I had been in the governor's position, I think I would have done the same thing, because it had gotten too polarized. It wasn't well understood what was happening. The business community, you need people to work together in this state, and the governor felt that you couldn't do this to business without them feeling like they'd been involved in the process enough. And you know, it was a courageous act to veto a bill that Labor wanted on behalf of trying to get people together at a later date.
A courageous view would have been to say to the leaders of the House and Senate, don't bring it forward because I'm going to reject it. But instead he gave this signal, a very powerful signal, that he's going to sign it. Now the union issue really has come full circle here. So in 07 it was that, which was for private sector unions, and then later on in 07 the executive order. The executive order said it's time to bring unions into state government. Now some 25,000, 22,000 employees will be represented by an exclusive representative, a union.
If I was the governor and if I was a member of the governor's inner circle, I think I would be concerned that that executive order is the kind of thing that can lay a template over a governor's legacy, whether or not it really has much impact or not. And you know, jury's certainly out on what kind of impact that that executive order is going to have. But that's the kind of thing. It's very hot button on the internet. It was a huge issue, very hot button. People did not. People were up and down on it, but I think it swung. The opinion on the internet swung more to an anti-Ritter stance on that particular issue.
Let me take it. What the governor's trying to do is trying to be more collaborative with the people that work in state government. These are the people that plow the roads and provide health care, teach our kids, and it's what Toyota does as opposed to what General Motors does. They work. They don't have this top-down labor management divide. They work together, and that's what the governor's trying to do with state employees. I think it's going to be a good thing for Colorado, and I'm surprised at the opposition because it was moving us in the right direction, a more modern direction of working of management and labor working together.
Of course, the difference with Toyota or any private industry that does that, they've got the final check and balance that if their budgets don't meet, they go out of business. When unions took over at United Airlines, there was a bankruptcy. When it comes to government, it ends up going into the taxpayers' pockets eventually. It's not like government is ever going to go out of business.
The governor doesn't change salaries of state employees. The legislature, elected by the people, makes those decisions. So there's still a check and balance there, and I believe this is really, this partnership